You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
Welcome back, Los Angeles. Welcome to the LA Football Show here on the LA Football Network, live on the mightier 1090 ESPN Radio. Excited to be back with you. This is your Trojans Huddle, some Trojans talk here on the LA Football Show. And we have a special guest joining us. As always, Jamal Madni, my co-host, joins me. But former USC Trojan, he hosts our Salute to Troy podcast. Coach Rowe, what's up, my brother? How are we doing? Welcome to the show.
What's going on? I'm happy to be here. I get to hang out with you guys. It's always fun to hang out with Jamal. We rarely get to. I talk to you all the time, Ryan, and in our chats. Jamal rarely talks, so it's fun to hang out with Jamal.
Oh, I love Alfred. And Ryan, you didn't mention two-time Rose Bowl champion Alfred Rowe, because the last time Alfred and I were on a show together, he was flashing the rings. And he put both those rings on the middle finger. And so he kind of gave me the middle finger as well with the rings. I mean, I love Alfred. Honestly, I think one of the most astute analysts and strategists of the game, not just about USC, but about high school football, and just one of the smartest minds around. So always a pleasure, Alfred, to talk with you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, are you getting a job on Riley's staff yet, or what? Fix that defense.
Hey, man. Old dog, new tricks. We'll just leave it at that.
Fair enough. So, well, great. Well, excited to get into it. Show is always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Make sure to head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Get you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Tell them the guys at the LA Football Network sent you. So, gentlemen, the schedule officially released yesterday, right? On Thursday, whatever, Wednesday. Days are already all mixed up. But the schedule was just released for the 2023 season for our USC Trojans. How do you want to do this? I mean, do you guys want to? We don't have to do predictions by any means. We're too far from that. Do you want to go game by game, or just kind of give an overview of our thoughts on the schedule release? How do you guys want to do it?
I think we should start with overview on thoughts and then go from there.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, so I'll just say this. So they have a bye in the fourth week of the season, and they end their season on a bye before what would be the Pac-12 title game, meaning their last game of the season is the ever-important Victory Bell game. So a little different. Typically, they seem to end, well, not typically, but last year they ended with Notre Dame the week after UCLA, whereas this year they'll end with UCLA and then go into a bye. So I'll leave it at that. Jamal, thoughts overall on this schedule? I can read them off to you if you don't have it in front of you, but I know you've already looked at it.
I've got it here, Ryan. To me, it almost feels like two seasons. The USC schedule for 2023 actually reminds me a fair bit of the UCLA schedule this year, where UCLA had a very soft September, and you and I kind of joked, Ryan, that it was almost a sort of a preseason, and they were going to be kind of 5-0, 4-0 going into Washington and Utah. I get a similar vibe here with USC in 23. When you look at the first three games, obviously the two non-conference, then Stanford, then the bye, that should really be kind of 3-0, no problem, and going through September. And then after the bye, you get into that teeth of the conference season end to end with no bye. So I think that's going to be what I'm really looking for, is how Riley integrates the new pieces in September, how Grinch looks at some of the new pieces. We talked about Lucas and Sullivan and some of the new additions, Jamil Muhammad, the others on the defensive side of the ball. So I think there's almost sort of this preseason element for USC in September. And then I think the October and November schedule is pretty significant. And the games that jump out to me at Notre Dame, and now when you've got Hartman, who transferred from Wake Forest, who I thought was one of the 6 or 7 best quarterbacks in America this year. Now you pair him with Notre Dame. I think that's going to be a very challenging game. At Oregon, of course, jumps out. And then after that, kind of at home, Utah, UCLA. So those kind of are, I think, to me, are kind of the 4 games that I'd be watching for. Those 2 on the road as the headline and the next 2 at home. So I see it as kind of 2 seasons, Ryan. And then that second season, I think, is going to be much more challenging than this season was overall for the Trojans.
Yeah, well, before I toss to you, Alfred, I mean, their final 6 games, and you just to add on what you just said, is a brutal based on the performance of this year, but also just knowing some of these teams are going to get better. You know, there's the some could get worse, but in this stretch, I don't think so. I mean, you just mentioned it, Notre Dame, then you were at home against Utah, then you're at Cal, which Cal's not good, but they should be a little better, you would think, and then at home against Washington, who's going to be great again with Michael Penix Jr., at Oregon, as you mentioned, with Bo Nix returning, and at home against UCLA. So that's a brutal 6-game stretch to end the year. And if they do what they're supposed to do, they'll be in the college football playoff, no questions asked. If they slip up a few times, then there's all these questions arising and will they ever really get past this hump and whatnot. So, Alfred, your overall thoughts on the schedule release?
Yeah, so I disagree with the first 2 games, and I'm really a big fan of playing a quality opponent up front. And I understand, this schedule was probably booked 5 years ago, and this was when the Pac-12 was trying to stick it to the SEC. It was like, well, if you guys are playing a wash game up front, we're going to start playing wash games up front. It's a little different now, and I mean, the conference has gained some momentum, but we need another season like we had in the past to get away with playing they're playing San Jose State and Nevada. The other game is Nevada. Right, so they're quality opponents. I'm not going to take anything away from the schools. Like what San Jose State has done recently in recent years is actually really good. So hopefully they'll come out and give them a game. But I 100% agree with Jamal. But I will split it into a tale of 3 seasons. Right, we got the upfront season before the bye. You got the middle where it's competitive, but it's not crazy. But like those last games, like they have to go to Oregon, they have to play UW. They just got the flip they got the flip side of it, right? And UCLA has what we had last year with the Pac-12 North, right? They got the easy end of the Pac-12 North, which is no longer easy anymore, right? Because Wazoo's also good, Oregon State's good, but we actually have the teeth of the schedule, right? So we have to deal with Oregon, we have to deal with the Washingtons of the world. Arizona's gotten better, right? Yep. Everybody's looking forward to the Dion game. The thing that actually interests me is why they have not set a date for the Arizona game. Why is it either the 6th or the 7th? I don't understand why there's no media release or anything like that. And I don't know if it's a Friday or a Saturday. I don't know if it's either or thing. And it has a lot to do, I think, with the new TV contract.
Probably.
So, but that right there determines a lot. And if it's a 6th or 7th game, when are they going to determine that game? And how much is it going to throw the team off? That matters. Like me, I'm still a creature of habit. I have to do the same thing every day. Athletes are creatures of habit, and that can alter your schedule. That's the only time I can see some type of upset. I think they could power through those final 6 games. I just hope Utah still does not have their number, and they lost it, and they found another girl to pick on. That's the only thing I worry about, right? They play the Huskies at home, which is fine. And I think they could deal with Autzen. If they could deal with Corvallis, they'll understand what they're dealing with when they go to Autzen. So it is a tougher schedule this year. I'm not really satisfied with up front because they didn't play anybody, which is fine. But they're going to have to power through this year because they're going through no bye. I will tell you this. The reason why and this is like food for thought. They play Notre Dame at home every year on Thanksgiving weekend. And then they play Notre Dame away when they have an open week. It's weird. So that's why we got lucky and don't have that Thanksgiving weekend, and we get that bye before we go to Pac-12 championship.
Okay, good to know. Makes sense. So obviously a lot colder out at Notre Dame and South Bend on Thanksgiving weekend. So we get the break there. But
Ryan, just look at the quarterbacks that they are going to play on this schedule. I mean, look, okay, first 3, I agree. Alfred and I are on the same page, kind of a glorified preseason, and I agree. I think that can maybe hurt long-term because sometimes you want that ramp up right away. You don't want to sort of sleepwalk through the season and then have such a big level jump. But at Arizona State is going to be Drew Pine, who was Notre Dame's quarterback this year. That was a decently competitive game. Shedeur Sanders, Jaden DeLora, Sam Hartman, Cam Rising. Cal has still got questions at quarterback. Then Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, and possibly Dante Moore. I mean, when you look at the set of quarterbacks after that bye, outside of Cal, you are talking about fringe NFL prospects that they are playing every week. And so putting that opposite an Alex Grinch scheme, that is going to be the dominant headline of the season for me with SC in 23, because they're going to play essentially 7 NFL quality prospects in their last 8 games, just about. And so, when you look at this schedule, I mean, it's the Pac-12 is a murderer's row at quarterback this year. I've never seen the quarterback position in the Pac-12 ever be stronger in one year, and I'm not sure there was a conference in the history of college football that will have a stronger quarterback depth than the Pac-12 going into 23. When you talk about Caleb at the top all the way down, I mean, outside of Stanford, Cal, that's about it in terms of, quarterbacks where there's a question mark at the position. Everybody else has a quarterback and at least can stay in any game.
Yeah, I mean, you can
in the fall. We'll be saying Colorado, Jamal. Don't get sold on Shedeur Sanders. We'll be saying Colorado in the fall. Doesn't have a quarterback either.
But I was going to say you could argue the 6th as of right now. The 6th best quarterback in the conference won the conference last year in Cam Rising. Depending, some people probably have him in the 4 range. Some people have him 5-6 range, but that's just how deep it is. So, Alfred, I'm glad you brought that up because I want to ask you. Obviously, another flip today for Colorado. 5-star corner who was committed to Miami, now going with Prime to Colorado. Realistically, how do you actually see this Colorado team? They got everyone's talking about him. They love him. Do you really realistically see this as a threat? Or are they more of a going from a 1-win team to a 5 or 6 win team this year?
They're a 1-win team going to 5 or 6 win team. Like, I mean, it's a show horse, right? But you still got to run the race. And I think the race is not as easy as it was as Jackson State. And I don't think that Shedeur Sanders is like Cam Rising is better than Shedeur Sanders, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we have to be realistic at what we're actually doing here. Like, it sounds good and all the hype is great, but it's now for real. And I'm on this one. I'm kind of like from Missouri on this one. Show me, like, and it's great that he got the opportunity and things like that. And it goes into things like personal things, like people try so hard to become a college football coach and he didn't have to try hard. He kind of fell in his lap, like, and so it's like a fair thing. And I know fair tickets are for fairs and things like that, but I mean, show me. I'm really from Missouri. Show me. Hopefully it works out, and it's great for the conference because once SC and UCLA leaves, like, you'll just have Oregon and Washington right now, and hopefully Arizona still gets better. So hopefully it works out and it works out well. But I don't get sold on 5-star recruits out of high school because we could get into the whole thing of, did they peak in high school and flatten out, right? Or do they exceed in high school, right? Nick Saban doesn't recruit a lot of 5-star athletes. If you look at them, they're like 4 3-star athletes that are becoming into their peak. So the 5-star thing doesn't really, like, oh, they got another 5-star. All right, is that a guy who peaked in high school, or is that a guy who's going to peak at a university level? Like, so, I mean, that's good. Keep recruiting, and hopefully it works. But right now, you show me.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the NFL draft, right? Like,
correct.
On paper, someone could have a great draft, but you got to see it perform out there. I mean, I still think he could be a good player, but first thing that comes to mind is Corey Foreman, like the number 1 5-star recruit 2 years ago out of Centennial, and pretty much has been a non-factor so far. Now, I think there's been some stuff against him and obviously defensive changes and stuff like that. But to your point, it's like, all right, well, let's see what actually happens and see how you actually perform when you put the pads on and you're in the trenches. So what's your thoughts on Colorado, Jamal? We haven't really talked much about him. Like, what's your kind of feeling on the vibe on Prime and what they're doing?
I'm sort of with Alfred on this one, Ryan. Is it's a lot of hype, and Coach Prime is someone who is not shy in the spotlight and having the brash and the swagger and the bravado. And I think he's made some pretty bold claims. And so let's see how this thing materializes here, because he's going to have to year over year be consistent with those recruiting classes. And he's going to have to appeal to I think there's a tremendous appeal with Coach Prime at the secondary position, at the skill positions, running back, wide receiver, even quarterback. But what is his appeal going to be to the big uglies up front, both on the offensive and defensive line and some of the harder-nosed guys in the front seven? Is his same cachet, is his same strategy going to work across the roster? Or is this team going to struggle at the fundamental level of being able to protect, being able to block, being able to control the line of scrimmage, but will be good for a few highlight plays and an upset or two every year? I think that's the question for me, is can he do that year over year in a Power 5 situation where at Jackson State, taking nothing away from him, but he was able to just out-recruit everybody else on brand alone, whether he knew the game or didn't know the game. With Jackson State compared to who their conference was, he could just kind of show up. It's like the famous line with the character Booby Miles in Friday Night Lights. He said, man, all I got to do is just show up. And that, I think, was Deion's strategy and all that it needed to be. Now he's got to do more. So I think let's see where it goes. I got them in that 4 to 5 win range right now. I just don't know if they structurally have enough bones yet. But let's see where this keeps at.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. And Jamal, we were in Boulder last year for the UCLA Colorado game. Obviously, that was a blow up by UCLA in the Carl Durrell era. We may have to go to Boulder again for this USC Colorado game and see Prime in person.
Alfred is going to be there, and I think the Trojan faithful, I think it's going to be a lot of fun to check that out. Alfred, I got a question for you. In terms of what you're seeing with the schedule. 2-part question. One is, how do you think year 2 of Grinch is going to go, given who they brought in? We talked about Lucas and Sullivan, Jamil Muhammad, and some of these guys losing Pili, losing Tuipulotu, losing Makai Blackmon. How do you see the defense ultimately netting out and playing against this murderer's row of quarterbacks? And then part B, any concerns on offense, as crazy as that is to sound? They did lose arguably their 3 most versatile players in Addison, Travis Dye, and now Kyle Ford. Loaded at receiver. Obviously, that 6 is better than anyone else, but they're very similar to me in terms of size, skill set, speed. Any issue that you see in terms of versatility on offense at all that could get them in trouble with this schedule?
So part 1 of your question, we actually addressed last night on Salute Detroit podcast that came out yesterday. So you guys can go take a look at that, but I will address it again. Ryan asked me, do I see this defense being a top 25 defense? And I told him, absolutely. The defense has gotten better what they've done with the recruiting. They're replacing, and this is how I explain it. They're replacing 3. So they got the guy from Oklahoma State. They got Muhammad from Georgia State. So that's somebody that you have to teach the defense to. Luckily, they get to come in spring. They're there now, so they get to learn the defense. So they get to go through spring and fall practice, which is a huge advantage. They only have to replace a corner. Other than that, their whole secondary is coming back. Their secondary was the leading factor in turnovers last year, right? Their D-line, they only lost 2. One of them was a big factor. The other one was okay. So Figueroa was okay. Like, he made plays here and there, but Tupo was the guy, right? So we have to replace him. I will say this, number 0 made a lot of plays last year. They also had a youngster, 98, who started making plays towards the end of the season, right? So refill and replace. They're loading up and reloading is what I said yesterday. So they're recruiting guys that are good in high school, but they're also reloading with the transfer portal. So with that being said, like, some scheme needs to be fixed, but talent-wise, I think they gotten better because they went and recruited a Goforth and a Gentry, just more talented and better size. So I think they've gotten better. And I'm really high on Muhammad. I think Muhammad reminds me a lot of Khalil Mack. So when you see Khalil Mack, I see that. The second thing is Austin Jones is back. It's a quick answer to that. Austin Jones is back. The O-line really has to get really good. Run power, baby. If Lincoln Ralen becomes a power football team, the receivers are going to eat. And we got Brenden Rice back, right? We got a plethora of receivers, and we just got a running back from USC East Coast that's coming USC West Coast that's kind of Reminds me of Raleek Brown, but I think he's a little bit better, but we'll see.
Don't even call it USC East Coast. Get that out of
Yeah.
here.
South Carolina. South
Carolina. Yeah, totally agree. So, all right. We are up against the clock. So it's got to be a quick answer, Alfred. Kyle Ford, not really flipping, but transferring from USC to UCLA. Does that show any concern for USC's kind of brand in SoCal, or is it more of just too much depth at receiver and he wanted to stay home because he's a SoCal kid coming from OLU?
I think it was an easy switch. He was did he graduate? If he graduated, a lot of times when they graduate, they kind of tell you go find another school because they don't want to play for grad school. I'm not mad at him. He's going down the street, doesn't have to move his house. I'm the biggest Kyle Ford fan on the network. I always tell you guys he's going to be the best pro. I wish him the best of luck. He made a business decision for him. He's good for it. He's good in my book.
Yeah, love it. I agree. So that's all time we got for the Trojan Huddle here on the LA Football Show. Quick break on radio, podcast. We'll see you guys all next week. Everyone take care.
You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.